Your phone vibrates. One new message. It's from someone you've been thinking about all day, so you smile and open it immediately. They ask a simple question. You reply without thinking twice. Then, nothing. At first, it doesn't bother you. They're probably busy. Maybe they're driving, maybe they're in a meeting. You lock your phone and go back to work. 10 minutes later, without consciously deciding to, your hand reaches into your pocket. Still nothing. Another 20 minutes pass. You check again. Nothing. That's when something strange begins to happen. Not on your screen, but inside your mind. Maybe they're upset. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I sounded too desperate. Maybe they're losing interest. By the end of the afternoon, you've imagined half a dozen different futures. By bedtime, it's 20. Yet if someone asked what actually happened today, the answer would be surprisingly simple. Almost nothing. No argument, no rejection, no bad news, no evidence that anything is wrong. Just silence. And somehow, silence has become louder than reality. Most people assume this is anxiety. They think some people are simply born as overthinkers, while others naturally stay calm. But anxiety isn't where this story begins. It begins much deeper, inside a system that has been running long before smartphones, emails, relationships, or even civilization itself. Hidden beneath every thought you've ever had is a machine. It never sleeps. It never truly rests. And despite what most of us believe, its primary job isn't to think. It's to predict. That's the first plot twist. Most people imagine the brain as a supercomputer designed to solve problems, make decisions, and produce intelligent thoughts. Those abilities are certainly important, but they're not its original purpose. Long before your brain became good at thinking, it became incredibly good at predicting what might happen next. Imagine walking through a forest nearly 200,000 years ago. The sun is setting, the air suddenly becomes quiet, then a bush a few feet away begins to move. You can't see what's inside. It could be the wind, or it could be a lion. You have only seconds to decide. If your brain assumes it's just the wind when it's actually a predator, you don't get another chance. But if your brain mistakes the wind for a lion, you waste a little energy and survive. Evolution noticed something remarkable. False alarms were cheap. Missing real danger was not. So generation after generation, natural selection favored brains that predicted danger before certainty arrived. Speed mattered more than accuracy because, in the wild, hesitation could be fatal. That ancient prediction system still exists inside your head today. The only thing that changed was the world around it. The lions disappeared. The prediction machine didn't. Today, the moving bushes have become unanswered text messages, medical test results, unexpected calls from your boss, job interviews, relationship conflicts, and emails that begin with, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Objectively, none of these situations are life-threatening. But your brain isn't asking whether they're dangerous. It's asking something much older. Can I predict what's about to happen? When the answer is no, your brain treats the situation as unfinished. Modern neuroscience increasingly describes the brain as a prediction engine. Every second, it continuously builds expectations about the future and compares reality against those expectations. Most of the time, you never notice this process because your predictions are accurate. But the moment reality stops matching what your brain expected, everything changes. Think about missing the last step on a staircase. For a split second, your entire body jolts. The extra step wasn't dangerous. The surprise came from the fact that your prediction failed. The exact same thing happens when someone doesn't reply to your message, when your doctor says, "We'll call you next week," Or when your manager ends a meeting with, "I'd like to speak with you privately." Your conscious mind wants information. Your prediction machine wants certainty. And to an ancient brain, those two things have always felt almost identical. That's why uncertainty feels so exhausting. Not because something bad has already happened, but because your brain cannot stop trying to close the gap between "I don't know" and "now I know." The problem is that modern life creates more of those gaps before lunch than your ancestors probably experienced in an entire week. And without realizing it, your ancient prediction machine is trying to solve every single one. The problem is that modern life creates more moments of uncertainty before lunch than your ancestors probably experienced in an entire week. An unread email, a delayed text message, a meeting invitation with no explanation, a doctor saying, "We'll call you with the results," a friend texting, "Can we talk later?" None of these situations can physically harm you, yet every one of them quietly activates the oldest survival system inside your brain. Why? Because uncertainty creates something your brain has always struggled with: an unfinished story. Imagine reading a novel only to discover that the final chapter has been torn out. You would probably spend the rest of the day wondering how it ends. Not because the ending changes your life, but because your brain hates incomplete patterns. Psychologists have observed this tendency for decades. Unfinished tasks, unanswered questions, and unresolved situations stay active in our minds far longer than completed ones. The brain naturally keeps pulling its attention back toward whatever feels unresolved. Now replace that missing chapter with your own future. Will I get the job? Did they like me? Why hasn't she replied? What did my boss really mean? Did I make the wrong decision? The moment the future becomes uncertain, your brain starts writing its own ending. And that's the second plot twist. The event isn't what's making you suffer. The possibilities are. Think back to the unanswered text message from the beginning of this story. In reality, only one thing has happened. Someone hasn't replied yet. That's the only fact. Everything else exists inside your imagination. Yet your body reacts as if every imagined future is equally real. One version says they're angry. Another says they're disappointed. Another says they're losing interest. Another imagines that something terrible has happened to them. Your conscious mind understands that only one of these futures can become reality. But your prediction system doesn't take chances. It prepares for all of them at once. That's why uncertainty feels so exhausting. You're not carrying one future. You're carrying 20. Modern neuroscience suggests that the brain is constantly comparing its predictions with reality, searching for anything that doesn't fit. When the future is unclear, that comparison never finishes. The prediction remains open, and your attention keeps returning to it, hoping the missing information will finally arrive. Suddenly, a strange pattern begins to make sense. Have you ever noticed how receiving bad news can sometimes feel strangely relieving? Not because the news is good, but because the waiting is finally over. The doctor finally calls. The interview finally ends. The relationship finally has an answer. The uncertainty disappears. For a brief moment, your brain becomes quiet. It finally has something solid to work with. That's why people often say, "At least now I know." Think about how strange that sentence really is. Sometimes certainty feels better than hope. Not because certainty is pleasant, but because uncertainty is mentally expensive. Your brain burns enormous amounts of energy trying to predict outcomes it cannot possibly know. It keeps running simulations, building alternate futures, replaying conversations, searching for clues that don't exist yet. From the outside, it looks like overthinking. From the inside, it feels like survival. And that's where most people misunderstand their own minds. They think overthinking is a search for answers. It isn't. It's a search for certainty. Every what if feels like progress. Every replayed conversation feels productive. Every imagined scenario creates the illusion that you're getting closer to the truth. But notice what actually happens. The more possibilities your brain creates, the more uncertainty it discovers. The more uncertainty it discovers, the more it thinks. It's like trying to escape a maze by building more hallways. Every new thought feels like another step forward, but you're simply giving yourself more places to get lost. Without realizing it, your prediction machine has fallen into a trap. It believes the next thought will finally bring certainty. The next scenario will finally explain everything. The next mental rehearsal will finally allow you to relax. But certainty never arrives, because the future hasn't happened yet. And that leads to the biggest question of all. If uncertainty is a permanent part of being human, why does your brain keep fighting a battle it can never actually win? If uncertainty is a permanent part of being human, why does your brain keep fighting a battle it can never actually win? Because for most of human history, it wasn't a losing battle. If your ancestors spent a few extra seconds thinking before crossing a river, they might notice stronger currents. If they hesitated before entering a dark cave, they might hear the growl of a predator. Back then, thinking longer often revealed information that could keep them alive. But modern uncertainty is different. An unanswered text message doesn't become clearer because you replay the conversation 50 times. A job interview doesn't reveal its outcome because you imagine every possible scenario. Tomorrow refuses to arrive any faster simply because you worry about it all night. The future isn't hidden. It hasn't been written yet. Your prediction machine, however, still treats it as if the answer must exist somewhere. It believes that if it keeps searching long enough, it will eventually discover the one thought that finally makes everything feel certain. That's the third plot twist. Overthinking isn't trying to predict the future. It's trying to erase uncertainty. And that's impossible. Imagine driving through dense fog late at night. Your headlights reveal only a few feet of road ahead. You have two choices. You can refuse to move until the fog disappears, or you can trust that seeing the next few feet is enough to keep driving. Life has always worked the same way. We simply forget. Most people believe confidence comes from seeing the entire road. But confidence has never been certainty. Confidence is taking the next step without demanding to see the destination first. Think about every meaningful moment in your life. Your first day at school, your first interview, the first person you fell in love with, the first time you moved to a new city, the first opportunity that changed everything. None of those moments came with guarantees. If certainty had been required before taking action, none of them would have happened. Researchers studying anxiety have repeatedly found that people don't become calmer because life suddenly becomes predictable. They become calmer because their brains gradually learn a different lesson. Through repeated experience, the nervous system updates its prediction. Uncertainty does not automatically lead to danger. In neuroscience, this learning happens through prediction errors, moments when the brain expects a threat, but reality turns out to be safer than expected. Each time that happens, the brain quietly rewrites its model of the world. That changes everything, because the goal is no longer to control the future. The goal is to retrain the prediction machine. Now let's return to where this story began. Your phone vibrates. You glance at the screen. It's the same conversation. Still no reply. Immediately, your mind starts whispering. Check again. Maybe they answered while you weren't looking. Maybe something is wrong. The urge feels almost automatic. For years, you've obeyed it. You check your phone. You reread old messages. You search for hidden meanings. You ask friends what they thought. Every time you did, your brain learned the same lesson. Good thing we kept checking. Uncertainty must be dangerous. Without realizing it, you weren't calming your mind. You were training it. Now imagine responding differently. You notice the urge. You feel the discomfort. But instead of chasing certainty, you simply let the feeling exist. You put the phone back in your pocket. 1 minute passes. Nothing happens. 5 minutes. Still nothing. 10 minutes. You're uncomfortable, but you're safe. And inside your brain, something remarkable is happening. The prediction it has trusted for years. Uncertainty means danger. No longer matches reality. That tiny mismatch is how the brain learns. Not through positive thinking. Not through repeating motivational quotes. Not by forcing yourself to stop worrying. It learns because reality quietly proves one of its oldest predictions wrong. And after enough moments like these, something begins to change. The unanswered message doesn't control your entire evening. The medical results don't consume your entire week. The interview doesn't define your entire identity. Not because uncertainty disappeared, but because your relationship with uncertainty changed. And that's the final twist. You will never eliminate uncertainty. You can only teach your brain that uncertainty is not the same as danger. Perhaps that's what emotional maturity really is. Not becoming fearless. Not becoming perfectly calm. Not knowing exactly what tomorrow holds. But realizing that you don't need certainty to keep moving. One day, your phone will vibrate again. Someone will leave your message on read. A decision will still be delayed. Life will still refuse to give you all the answers. Your brain will whisper, "What if everything goes wrong?" It always will. That's what millions of years of evolution designed it to do. But this time, you'll smile. You'll put the phone back into your pocket. And you'll continue living your life. Not because the future suddenly became predictable, but because you finally understood something your ancient brain never had the chance to learn. Uncertainty was never the enemy. It was the beginning of every meaningful chapter you have ever lived. Every friendship, every opportunity, every dream, every moment that changed your life started with a future you couldn't see. So maybe the goal was never to predict what comes next. Maybe the goal was simply to become the kind of person who can keep walking, even when the path disappears into the fog. Because the strongest minds aren't the ones that eliminate uncertainty. They're the ones that stop mistaking uncertainty for danger.